Hello and welcome again to another episode of One Starfish, where our mission is to help change the world one person or one starfish at a time. As always, make sure to rate, review, subscribe, share. That's how we get the word out about what we do. I love our podcast because I'm always meeting new people. So today I'm getting to meet Jennifer Wilson. Jennifer Wilson worked with her parents actually in a family business. So that's cool in and of itself for 30 years. And then she took over and then they actually retired at the same time. How cool is that? Retire with your parents. And be able to do that. And they transitioned into the board, which I think is also interesting because a lot of times people have a hard time giving up ownership. So that in and of itself is kind of cool for me. And I'm sure for some of your listeners. And now she's in coaching and consulting. She's writing books. She's got a book out called Homestay. We'll have those links in the show notes. We'll get into what that's actually about in the podcast. But thanks for being on.
Thank you so much for having me, Angela. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Well, yeah, let's get into things. So tell us a little bit, first of all, about your business that you and your parents had, what the mission was, what the goal was. And then, why you transitioned out and a little bit about how you transitioned out from a family run business to like not a family run business. It's interesting.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So our family business is called the Canada Homestay Network. And what we do is partner with educational institutions like school districts, high schools, universities, colleges, language schools that run international student programs. And they recruit the students and manage the academics, but they need a place for the students to live. And a lot of international students want to stay with local families to help them learn the language and get accustomed to the culture. So that's where we come in. Our job is to recruit local families. We match them with the students, and then we manage the relationship for the entire time they're here. So that's called homestay. Most people in the US know it as just student exchange. Yeah.
And what got your family into doing that like 30 years ago?
Oh, it's such a funny story. My mother was running a bed and breakfast out of our family home at the time. So she's kind of a serial entrepreneur.
I was going to say, this is entrepreneurship. Yep.
Yeah. And there was a school in Vancouver that was opening a new campus in Toronto. And they found my mom through her reputation as somebody who is great at hospitality. And they asked her if she would run their homestay program for them. And she said, "What's homestay?" She'd never heard of it before. And she said no initially, but they persisted. They came back after a month or two. And the second time they managed to convince her to do it. She thought it would be something she would sort of run off the side of her desk for a while and ask a few friends to help out with hosting students. And that worked for the first couple of months. But by the third month, there were over 50 students who needed homes, and she realized she had a little business on her hands. So that was in 1995, and it's just grown from there. So in the last 30 years, we've gone from being a little operation out of my mom's basement in Toronto to running, coast to coast. We have students all across Canada now, and we've placed over 100,000 students since we started 30 years ago. Wow. So, yeah, it's a lot. It's a big operation. We have close to 100 employees now. So, yeah. And you asked about the transition. So about 7 years ago now, I was in a program called Strategic Coach. And it was a fantastic program that helps entrepreneurs.
Who runs that one? I feel like I've heard of it.
Dan Sullivan.
Yeah. I love him.
Yeah. So his whole mission
is better than 2X.
You got it. Yeah. So he helps entrepreneurs build what he calls self-managing companies. Right?
Yes. You just read that book too. Good book.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Anyway, through the process of being in that program, I realized that it was time for me to start putting into plan and exit strategy for myself. I had begun to, I wanted to follow other dreams. I sort of fell into the family business back when it, over 20 years ago. So I set into motion a 5-year plan for myself that I started in 2018. And had the vision of wanting to be out of the business by the time my youngest was graduating from high school. So it sort of felt like kind of this life transition point that would work well for me. The pandemic hit, of course, in the middle of that 5-year plan, which was sort of a massive upheaval for all of us. But
I'm sure, yeah, because there probably wasn't as many kids traveling at that point.
Oh, yeah, no, they shut the borders. So 100% of our revenue, that they just turned off the tap overnight, right? So it was really hard for us, but we managed to get through that. We survived the pandemic and we've grown back since. And I stuck the landing on my exit. So yeah, we had to. It took that long because we had to design sort of a succession strategy for me, create new positions to. So I created a director of operations position, for example, which was the person that I had in mind to take over from me. And I think we ended up giving my leadership team about 1.5 years notice when it was time for me to actually plan the exit in more concrete detail. And then it took a good year for me to transition all of my work off to those people that we had figured out would help me out. Yeah.
Cool. By the way, guys, if you haven't read the book, I just read it. That's why I've heard this one.
Really?
Yeah. 10X, I read it multiple times. But I just read it again over like the last couple months, and then Self-Managing Company I just read like last month or something. So yeah, and yeah, who not how, and yeah, really good book. So if you guys are looking, if you're a business owner, check things with Dan Sullivan. He's got good stuff. So that's so cool. You put it into use and you applied it, and there you are. And you did it mainly because you wanted to write books. So was one of the things, correct? Is that kind of what you said? Okay. So now we wrote a book, Homestay. So tell us a little bit about it, and like who would want to read it? What's the point of it? Give us a little bit of details. Yeah, she's holding it up. If you're watching YouTube, check it out. It looks like a homestay kind of book. It's very homey.
Yeah, it's called The Heart of Homestay. These are actually hearts in the top, sort of hard to see them.
Oh, yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Okay. The subtitle is Creating Meaningful Connections When Hosting International Students. Yeah, so the book is designed for host families and homestay coordinators. So the people who are opening their home and the folks who are supporting them, to help them make the most of the experience. I realized when I was working in the homestay business that there weren't really any good resources for families beyond the kind of general, 20-page PDF host guide that you get handed when you agree to host a student, right? Lots of organizations do orientations and offer ongoing training to families, but it's all sort of ad hoc or a little less formal. There aren't any books like this on the market. So I decided I wanted to write a book, and I love reading myself. And one of my favorite sort of formats for books is when they combine scientific research with storytelling. So that's what I did in my book. I interviewed dozens of students and their hosts, and I share their stories throughout the book to teach the reader about how to be a good host. So everything from dealing with food issues, bathrooms and bodies, difficult conversations, communication and language, bias, so it really touches on sort of all of the common challenges that families face as they're going through this process, and reminds them why they do the work. So it's really focused on the positive stories. Doesn't shy away from the challenges, because there are hard parts of looking after other people's kids, as you can imagine. But it's really meant to inspire the reader and offer them insights and practical strategies that they can use in their day-to-day lives. And one of the really cool things about it is that I've gotten feedback from a lot of my readers that it's not helpful just for hosting, but for life in general, because some of these lessons and strategies can support you in all of your relationships, let alone getting along with people from other countries.
Really cool. That's awesome. I love it. And where do you're also doing coaching and consulting. Tell us a little bit about what you do there, and like, what's your ideal clients? If someone's listening to this, who are you looking for?
Yeah, sure. So I'm also a certified Kolbe consultant. I actually found out about Kolbe when I was doing the strategic coach program. So Kolbe is an assessment tool that measures how we solve problems or how we take action. And I love it because it's not a personality test. So it complements the other kind of assessments that a lot of people have done, like Myers-Briggs or DISC or StrengthsFinder, right? Those are great. This one's different. And it focuses only on strengths. So when people learn about their Kolbe profile, it really sets them free to be themselves. It helps them understand how they operate best. And that's not always the way that their boss expects them to act, for example. And I think it really helps people understand where they can make the biggest impact in their careers. So it's very, it can really help with people understanding what kinds of jobs they should be in, because it's all about problem solving. So for example, one of the action modes that Kolbe measures is how we take, how we deal with information, gathering and sharing information. And there's a spectrum of people who really like kind of Cole's notes, like just give me the high bullet points. And then there's the other end of the spectrum, people who love to do research, dig into all the facts, want to really uncover things and understand them in depth. So if you're in a role that requires a lot of detailed research, you want to be somebody who sits at that end of the spectrum, right?
So what was it for you? I'm curious. What's your strength?
I'm a fact finder.
Okay.
So so you get 4 numbers of these 4 action modes. So I'm an 8443. So what that tells you is that when I begin the problem solving process, I do it by looking for information, which is sort of aligns with what I said earlier about loving to read and loving to understand things. Yeah. Okay. So I'm an 8 out of 10 on that scale. And then the other 3, so the second one is called follow through. That measures how we organize and store information. The third one is called quick start. That's how we deal with risk and uncertainty. So I'm a 4 on that, which means that I prefer to protect the status quo rather than taking a lot of risks. Okay. And then the last one is called implementer, and that's how we deal with space and tangibles. So being a 3 on that, it tells you that I like to think abstractly, and I can think about concepts in my mind's eye without using 3-dimensional objects to solve problems. So
you're like a visionary.
Yeah, it's fun. Yes, the implementer piece is often people who are in more knowledge work kind of jobs rather than someone who's like a carpenter or a mechanic or something like that. Yeah. So Kolbe is one of the things I do in my consulting practice. I also do strategic planning. I love working with small to medium-sized businesses who don't think they need a strategic plan. I like to do really bespoke kind of customized planning for organizations because I think when you're smaller, you don't want the big cookie cutter thing that you would, some places would do like a 3-day offsite and pay tens of thousands of dollars for a big thing with a big corporation. That's not what I do. So I love working with organizations to help them really get clear on their goals and priorities. To me, a strategic plan is really just a filter that allows you to make decisions about what you're going to do and what you're going to say no to. And then in my coaching business, I do one-on-one leadership coaching. A lot of my clients are people who are in leadership roles for the first time. So like new managers, for example, or people who are leveling up within their career and kind of looking for the next thing. I love working with people who are sort of in career transition because I've been through that myself a couple of times. And again, I can combine the Kolbe score with my coaching to help people really find their niche and maximize their strengths, which I love. So yeah.
You're in your strength zone. I love it. That's awesome. Very cool. If someone was looking at that, what are some obviously, if you want some coaching on that, obviously reach out and get more specifics. What are some things that you've seen as you get coaching with people that maybe they're, I don't know how do I word this? They're working in their weak zone instead of their strength zone. And how would they know that and be able to transition and still you're like, well, it's my job. So how does that work if someone actually has a job or even an entrepreneur in the first, first part, you're doing absolutely everything, not just your strength zone things. How do you coach on that, and how would you talk to someone about that?
Yeah, when it comes to the Kolbe, so one of the really important things to understand is that we can act in any of the striving zones at any time, but when we do, it's just more tiring for us. So if you're an entrepreneur and you're launching a new thing and it's having, the activities that you're doing are forcing you to work outside your, what Kolbe calls your MO, you can do it. It just will cause more stress. It'll feel kind of like you're writing with your non-dominant hand day after day in a way. So it's possible, and it's not the kind of thing that you'd want to sustain over a long period of time because it would burn you out. So if you can do these sorts of activities sort of for, let's say, 6 months, and then bring in other people to support you, ideally you would delegate that type of work to somebody else. So entrepreneurs are in a tough spot because you're right, they have to wear all the hats all the time. And yeah, it's not impossible. It's just tiring. So my coaching for folks, oftentimes my clients work in teams. They're not solopreneurs. So we talk a lot about borrowing other people's energy to do certain tasks at certain times. And then the other thing that I coach people on is, so two things. One is having conversations with their supervisors about the way they do things in order to kind of get on the same page to say, I know you expect me to do it this way, but I'd really rather do it that way. Is that okay? Because the outcome is going to be the same. So really, as a leader, if you're listening to this, or better, absolutely. Setting your team free to do it their way and just setting the markers for what you expect in terms of outcomes, that's going to really free up your team to be more productive and work less stressed, in a less stressy kind of way. And then, as I said, the borrowing energy idea is really about sort of bringing in another team member, either to work alongside you or to delegate your work to them. And then I think the other piece that happens, hopefully not all the time, is that sometimes folks discover that they're really not in a good fit career and that it's time to make a change and figure out what is going to work better for them. I actually have a coaching client right now who's already decided to make a career change, and she's with me for coaching to help her with that exit because she's trying to figure out what she wants to do next. And we did the Kolbe score again after she'd made this decision, and it was just like a bunch of light bulbs going off. She's like, "Oh, that's why I'm so unhappy." And I said, "Yes, this is like clearly you're in a role that's requiring you to, move against your MO." And in particular, she's somebody who has a strong quick start energy. So it means that she likes to innovate and come up with new ideas and kind of work against the mold. And she's in a role that's very sort of stagnant. They don't need people to reinvent the wheel in that job. So she's constantly bringing new ideas and they're shutting them down. So she needs to be in a role that allows her to kind of, flex that creative energy a little bit more than she can right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like trying to think of people. Yeah. So I love it. And now you're writing another book. Is that right?
Yeah, I am. Yes, I love writing. As I said, I wanted to write since I was a kid. So coming out,
that's one of your strengths here.
Yeah.
Good energies. Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually wrote a memoir about 10 years ago that I shelved. That was the book that I had to write. I think if you talk to a lot of authors, they'll say there's this book that I had to write. So that one might come out one day when my kids are old enough. But then I wrote The Heart of Homestay, and now I'm working on another memoir about our 100-year-old family cottage in Ontario. It was built by my great-grandfather in 1924, and we've enjoyed it. My kids are fifth generation cottagers, and we're now at a bit of a crossroads as a family about how to manage the fact that it's starting to fall down. It's like it needs some serious repairs. My parents are in their 80s, so I'm in that kind of moment, my life where I'm watching and thinking about my parents not being with us anymore. How does that impact our experience of the cottage? How are my brothers and I going to manage sharing it? And then what's sort of the next generation going to want from it? So I think a lot of families can relate to this experience of having some, even if it's not a property, but some legacy of your family that's needing to be passed from one generation to the next. And and thinking about all the issues that surround that. And then also just wanting to weave in all the wonderful stories and experiences that our family has had over the years and how that's changed in the last 100 years. From when my great-grandfather used to bring, a steam trunk up for the whole summer by train and steamship to get to the cottage, to, nowadays where we obviously drive there just for the day sometimes. So yeah, lots has changed.
Wow, that's cool. That's awesome. So, going back to the book, which just came out, and we, want people to check it out. Who are you looking for when it comes to homestaying? Like, what kind of families are you looking for? And who's the ideal person, I guess, in that situation?
The ideal person is someone who likes people and who's open to helping create a home away from home for a young person who's often traveling for the first time. It's really about your mindset and your heart. That's what really matters. So in terms of the sort of demographic profile, we have everything from young families with, newlyweds all the way to empty nesters who kind of miss having young people in the home, single parents, folks with or without kids, with or without pets. It really doesn't matter. It really runs the gamut. So it's what's more important than who's in your house is, again, your attitude toward it and what you want to get out of it.
And probably some stability.
Stability, yeah. You don't have to own your own home. You can rent, but you need to have, obviously, logistically, you have to provide a private room for the student. And usually they're on a meal plan, which requires you to be around to provide, sit with the student, have dinners with them. So if you work shift work and you're really busy in the evenings, that might not be the best environment. But but other than that, it really just takes somebody who cares about people and wants to help out.
Cool. And then, because I don't really know how it works, I know people that have had it, but I don't know that they've gone through a program in order to have it. They just had it. When you're working through a program, do they actually get paid? Like, is some of the cost covered? Oh, okay. Okay, cool.
Yeah, good question. So
I was just thinking that. I'm like, you have to make extra food and stuff like that. I'm like, that sure adds up if it's like a young guy, especially, or something. Or like me when I was younger.
Yeah, it's true. I know. I grew up with two brothers. I know how they can eat. Yeah. So in Canada, all of our hosts are paid. And in the United States, it depends on the visa program that the student has come in on. So for the high school kind of 18 to 24 age, there's two programs. One's called the J1 and the other is the F1. The J1 visa, those are volunteer-based programs. So the students only come for a year. They can't stay longer, and the hosts have to volunteer. And the F1 program, they can stay longer than a year, and the hosts can get paid. So it just depends on which program you sign up with if you're in the US. And there's a kind of a mixture. Sometimes the school will run it themselves sort of in-house, like in Canada too. And sometimes they'll work with an organization like ours. So in the US, those are called sort of sponsor organizations. And in many cases, they do the student recruitment as well as the homestay, and they partner with the school. So they kind of like run the whole thing.
And then how do you get, because I'm always I'm curious about this.
Yeah.
How does homestay, like the company, get paid? They get paid by the schools? Is this like school funding from tax dollars then? Or is it from the international companies or international countries? Like, did Canada pay for it? Or does how does it work?
Good question. Yeah. So in Canada, the student pays 100% of our revenue. So all of our fees come from what the student pays to come here. So the student pays international student tuition fees. So even if they go to a publicly funded school, unlike a Canadian who gets a free seat in that program, an international student has to pay their full freight. And then they also pay their homestay fees. So they pay a placement fee to us, and then they pay an amount that goes to the host family, and we get a little bit of that every month. So we collect a little spread on what the host family gets paid.
Okay.
In the United States, the J1 programs benefit from federal funding. And I think the F1, I don't know how much the F1 programs do. I'm not as familiar with the United States model, but I'm learning more about it. And so you can imagine that in this current sort of geopolitical climate, the funding is under threat. And here in Canada too, there's sort of a growing kind of anti-immigration sentiment that has meant that the government has cut the number of study permits that it's issuing to international students. They're hoping that that will help alleviate the pressure on housing and other supports in communities. So it's been a tough few years following the pandemic to have this kind of political situation kind of brewing. So everybody's really struggling right now, unfortunately. But I think this is a time when international student programs are more important than ever. And the benefits that international education brings to our communities you can put a number on it. It's actually, a multi-billion-dollar industry, both the United States and Canada, that injects a lot of money into our communities and helps keep our schools open and thriving. So all of the cuts to international education, we're seeing it, show up in cuts to programs, layoffs of students or teachers, especially in community colleges. So it's been a tough go for us the last few years. Yeah.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and I know that I know students that have come over for college and stuff. Yeah, they pay a lot of money to go to school and not.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's no different than if we go to another country too. We pay for that, of course, too. So
yeah, and that money is a really big part of these program budgets. They've really benefited over the last many years from a steadily growing international education market. That's Canada and the United States are the top two destinations in the world for English-speaking students who want to study abroad.
Right. Yeah, that makes so much sense. That's awesome. I love it. Awesome. In wrapping up, I always have 3 final questions, and then anything we didn't touch on. Like I said, guys, all the information will be in the show notes for Jen. Definitely feel free to check that out. The book, what she's doing for coaching, the Kolbe program, like all of that. It'll all be there. So definitely, reach out if any of this is like intriguing. You're like, I want to learn more. Check it out. So first and final question is, if someone's looking for their purpose, what's one sentence you would say that could help them find it?
Yeah, great. I would say first, before I give you my sentence, that people who are looking for their purpose, keep in mind that you're already living it in many cases. You may not be able to do it all the time, and every single thing that you do, perhaps it's not really that consistent. But people tend to think that life purpose is sort of one of these great mysteries that you have to figure out when you're in a struggle, but it really isn't a mystery because you've been purposeful in your life many times already by now. So and I'd also say that purpose is a journey, not a destination, right? It's something that we're kind of exploring all the time. So I'm going to give you a sentence that I actually heard at a conference. There was a great speaker by the name of Pascal Lacombe, and he said, fill in the blank. I blank, so that blank. That can be how you figure out your purpose.
Good. Second question, what's one favorite quote that you have and why?
So my favorite quote comes from Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which is a fantastic book. It's been out for a long time. It's not new, but it really has stood the test of time. And one of his habits, I think it's habit number 5, is seek first to understand, then to be understood. And I think it's a really powerful way to approach any kind of interpersonal communication, relationships. It helps put us into a very curious mindset and reminds us that people can't be filled until they're empty. And for them to feel empty, they need to be seen and heard. And so if you can put yourself in the mindset of listening to people and learning about them before you share whatever it is that you need to share, it's a lot more effective and impactful.
Good. And turn a final question. What's one word or sentence you want on your gravestone?
Yeah, I had to think about this one. I came up with be curious.
Yes. Okay. Cool. I like it.
Yeah.
Awesome. You run into someone in the coffee shop and they've listened to this and they've heard lots and they're, learning about different strengths and possibly at the homestay, whatever it is that, grabbed them from our podcast. What's something we didn't touch on that you think would be really impactful to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, I think going back to the idea of homestay, even if you don't have a spare room and are interested in taking an international student into your home, you can still make a difference in other people's lives. And I think host families is something that came up again and again when I was writing the book, were how many times people said to me that they were astonished by the smallest gestures making a biggest impact on somebody. So that would be what I want to leave people with, is don't underestimate the impact you have. And it's right in your title of your podcast, changing the world one starfish at a time. The really small gestures, just a kind word to somebody, holding the door for someone, doing something nice. You never know what those kinds of things, like what that will do for someone and how it can make a difference in someone's life. So yeah, be kind.
So that's so good. Guys, that is a great way to wrap up. Go out there. Let's share this. If we can have one person or one starfish at a time together, we can change the world. Thanks, Jen.